All right. Welcome, everybody, to week 4, and congratulations for making it to the final week of PRO213. And thank you also for allowing me to pre record this session. This will allow you all to review it even earlier this week if you'd like to. I mentioned last week that I'll be out of town first couple of days of next week with the 4th of July holiday, and so but I did want to get this in so that you could review the session sooner than later and not wait until later in the week. So that's why we've got this pre-recording going. It's Saturday, the week and before that I'm recording this, and that's why we don't have any participants tonight or today when I'm recording this. So again, congratulations for making it to week 4. Hopefully you feel like you're caught up at this point. Everything that has been turned in on time to this point has been graded. Although next week it might be a little bit hit and miss early in the week getting the week 3 grading done because of the holiday. Just as a reminder, I had mentioned this at the beginning of the course. I do accept late work, and I fully expect all of you to try to go in and get your posts updated if you're missing any posts from the prior weeks and get caught up. We mentioned in week 1, and I'll reiterate it at this point, that the reason that people don't pass these classes is because they don't turn in their work or complete their posts. If they do, they almost always pass the class, or even better, get the grade that they were hoping for if they put the right effort in and make sure and get all their work completed. I do accept late work. However, this coming Saturday is a hard cutoff for work to be turned in, meaning the school will not allow me to extend beyond Saturday at midnight this week, accepting work from you all. So get ahead of it this week. Get it done earlier in the week if you at all possibly can, so that we don't have any emergencies come up Friday or Saturday and put you in a situation where we can't get done what we need to get done for the class to be completed. Okay? If you have any questions or concerns about coursework to this point, let me know. This week, we're going to learn about saving strategies, saving plans, saving management. We've learned about budgeting. We've learned about money management. We've learned about debt and credit. And now it's time to learn about savings and to try to encourage you all to put some sort of savings plan together, if not plan for the future when you're done with school and maybe have additional opportunities to save and invest. There are all different ways to save and invest, and so there's only one right way. One of the reasons that we did last week's interview is because it gives us an opportunity to get feedback from many different people that are successful at managing their money and find out that some of the themes are fairly similar, like living within your means, having a budget, saving, paying yourself first. The types of things that we've learned about, those themes tend to be consistent. However, the actual execution of those themes and how you accomplish those themes can be very different from one person to the next. Just like a diet or exercise plan from one person to the next, the basic themes stay pretty similar, but how we execute on those different plans can be very, very different. And we just need to find something that works for us. The important part is that we put the time and effort and energy into it so that we actually do find something that works for us and stick with it, right? And be consistent with whatever that plan or with whatever that method is, that we stay consistent with it. All right. It's early. I'm already getting, I'm already needing a drink. We've been working hard already. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about last week. We always spend a few minutes kind of in review for the week prior. And last week was, as I mentioned, a money management week. The week before was lifestyle, and the week before that was budgeting. This last week, we learned about some additional details and tips when it comes to debt. And we talked about how credit scores work. We talked about how to check your report and update your report. We posted some things on the discussion board last week about that, and also talked a little bit about it during the session. Let me just find a timer here real quick so I can keep track of the time. I forgot to set one. One sec. Okay, sorry about that. Just wanted to make sure I had timer going so we make sure and complete the right amount of time. Since I'm starting at a strange, I'm not starting on the hour, since I'm pre-recording this at an off time. We're not doing the live session. I just need to make sure that we had the right time. Okay, so as far as debt, we talked about scores and credit reports last time. We talked about how to check those, how to improve those, which is a very significant and important part of your personal money management throughout your lives. It can dictate getting good loans that charge significantly less interest, and you know, you can save thousands and thousands of dollars on car loans and home loans if you've got better credit. So it's something that no matter how much you make, how little you make, you know, it's not dependent on how much you make. That doesn't dictate at all what your credit score is or how your credit report is. What does is effective money management. And then if you do get in trouble, you know, we need to work hard at correcting whatever it is that we, you know, did wrong. Late payments, liens, you know, debt collection, bankruptcy, all those kinds of things happen to many people. And so you don't need to feel bad if that's happened. What we do need to do is going forward, avoid those things, obviously, and also work to clear those things that are on our record over time. So some things like a bankruptcy just take 7 years. There's nothing we can do about that sooner. But other things, you know, like a late pay or something like that, the longer we pay on time, the further we get away from that, the better our credit improves and our score improves. And creditors see that getting further and further away from current, you know, the current situation, and they then start to improve our interest rates and improve our ability to get good loans. Okay. We talked about how interest is critical. We need to make sure that we're careful about what the interest rates are on our different debt. That kind of plays into the next part, which is good versus bad debt. You know, generally speaking, bad debt is the debt that has high interest rates and compounds at a more uh, uh, frequent rate, meaning you might have daily compounding interest on a credit card, where on a home mortgage, it's not daily compounding. So it's not increasing as fast as, say, a credit card, payday loan. We talked about how some of the bad loans are like title loans, pawn loans, payday loans. Those types of loans are that they're not, you know, these are loans and lines and ways to get access to money that basically are just there because people don't plan ahead and don't manage their money correctly. If everybody planned ahead and managed their money correctly, those types of organizations wouldn't exist, and we wouldn't have predatory, what we call predatory interest rates and terms on some of those loans. Sometimes those get as high as, you know, 25, 30, 100%, 200% effective rates on those types of loans based on the terms that are given. And so we want to try to avoid bad debts as much as possible. There are, you know, quote unquote good debts like a car loan with a really low interest rate, or a home loan with a really low, you know, effective interest rate. And these are the kinds of debts that we pay over time. They don't compound daily, and they're for things, they're for assets that actually have some value. Not necessarily a car. Car really shouldn't be considered as an increasing value asset, but it is an asset that can help us get in front of, you know, accomplish our income and accomplish the things that we have to do. So it can be a necessary evil, I guess you could say. When we talk about good debts, we're not talking about any debt as something that's real positive that we should look forward to, because we're always having to pay interest on those debts. However, relative to credit card debt and to payday loans and title loans and pawn loans, those types of loans, that's much better. Okay, so on a relative basis, that's better debt, or what we refer to as good debt versus bad debt. When we're trying to get out of debt, you know, there's obviously good programs, and we've talked about some of them. We get control of our budget based on, you know, maybe using a cash-only system like envelopes, or something really, really strict or rigid like Mint or Quicken, you know, to really follow every single expense as it comes and goes, and then maybe just use cash to keep control and not spin out of control with credit cards and other opportunities to go into debt. Having said that, if you're already in debt, then you need to make sure and get a hold of your budget so you don't slide further. That's step one. But the second step is to prioritize your debt. And as we discussed last week, two different maybe main methods for that. One is to prioritize based on the highest interest rate, and one is to prioritize based on the lowest amount. Either one allows you to snowball pay down over time, which is the most effective way to get rid of debt overall. Meaning, when you pay off one debt and you've got multiple debts, then you can take whatever you were paying towards that debt and take all that plus your current payment on other debts and take it to the next highest interest rate or lowest amount debt that you have. Okay, whichever one of those strategies you're going to use, stick to it. And every time you pay something off, just take whatever payment you are making and snowball it or add it to the next debt until all your debts are paid off. Now, ideally, once all your debts are paid off, maybe it's your mortgage that's the last one that gets paid off, then you'd be able to sock all that money away and save it, and really make some significant progress towards, retirement. But the biggest thing, and I tell people all the time, is when I'm doing financial planning, retirement planning for people, having their home paid off, having all their debts paid off by the time they get to retirement is one of the biggest indicators of whether or not they're going to have financial freedom and independence in retirement. So it's not just about being able to save more once we pay off all our debts, but perhaps even more importantly, it's just not having that burden, that cash flow burden of having to pay on those debts every single month, especially after we transition from work and into retirement. Okay. Obviously, all of us psychologically, emotionally would love to have no debt, right? But it's something that takes a lot of effort and time and energy for most of us. No matter what we make, though, it's possible. And so I just have a very firm goal to pay off debts as fast as possible. But if not, sooner, at least by the time that we retire. Okay. And one of the keys to that is obviously living within your means, having a budget, and doing the things that it takes to not increase your debt every month. As we talked about, the key to paying down debts and having a successful debt management strategy is, first of all, not sliding further, having an emergency reserve, being on top of your monthly inflows and outflows so that you don't increase the amount of debt that you have each month. But the snowball effect is just like having a small snowball that you roll, when it's really that sticky snow, and it grows really, really fast. Those are the best types. Those are the best snow days, right? Is when the snow is wet and kind of thick and heavy. You can roll that snow and it grows very, very quickly. Well, the same is true for paying off debt. If we'll take whatever strategy we're using, either highest interest rate strategy or the lowest balance strategy, and take whatever we were paying on the previous debt and add it to the next until it snowballs into a situation where we're making a lot of progress, when we finally get to the point where we're paying off probably our last debt, which is usually a mortgage. But the key is not to increase debts along the way, obviously, as well. Okay. All right, so that was debt management from last week. We talked about a lot of tips for money management too. We talked about, themes that we've already talked about a lot, like tracking, automating, and making sure that we understand our needs versus our wants. And obviously, we go into all these a little bit more, but we've talked about them quite a bit already to this point. And then we talked about 2 different articles last week during the session that had 50 different financial tips. And I would be pleased if I found that some of you were referring back to those different sites, because both of them, one of them was like the time.com site, which is basically, if I'm not mistaken, that owns the site money.com or the Money Magazine. Anyway, it had 50 tips, financial tips to change your financial life or something like that. But many of them we've talked about in this class, and it'd be great to have those as a reference to go back to and say, okay, which ones am I doing well? Which ones can I make some improvements on? How can I make a little bit of progress on these different financial management issues? Okay, so that's one of the things we covered last week as well. And finally, last week, one of the things that we did was that we did an interview, right, for last week's discussion board to get some feedback on financial money management. Many of you guys got some good feedback, general feedback. What we were looking for is very specific, day to day, what do you do to manage your money the way that you do, and how are you so successful at managing your money? So a lot of what I saw were kind of, the general themes, like make sure and live within your means and make sure and set goals and things like that. Those are all wonderful, and that's great. What I was hoping for is a lot of practical, very practical, hands-on ideas. This is what I do to make sure that I don't spend too much each month, or this is the specific thing that I take care of each month or do each month with my bank in order to save for the future or pay down debt, something like that. Many of you didn't get that specific, and that's okay. The ones those of you that did get that specific and had very, very specific advice from those folks that you interviewed, I really appreciated that. That's what I was hoping for, so that all of us could come away from the discussion board having a few tips and tricks that already worked for somebody, right? More than just reading information, we can find somebody that we know that has had success with their finances and find out specifically what do they do in order to manage their money and get to their, to accomplishing their goals over time. Okay. So hopefully you did that. If not, that's okay. That's what we're hoping for, those that most of us would have some feedback. And I've seen some very good feedback from last week, So I know many of you did this, but I wanted very specific feedback from the person you were interviewing about what we can do. What specific thing can we do? Okay, and then this week, as far as the discussion board, which is the main part, most of the points, as far about a quarter of your grade each week is from the discussion board. But this week you're creating a PowerPoint. It's a 2-page content paged PowerPoint. What does that mean? It means that if you're going to do a title page or a reference page at the end, as far as slides are concerned, those do not count towards your 2 pages. Okay, so if you're going to do a title page, you'd have a 3-page PowerPoint. Okay, your title page and then 2 content pages. What the discussion board is asking you to do is have 2 content pages about savings options like savings or CDs, savings accounts or CDs, and there's more information, of course, in your instructions. But specifically, you're going to look at savings options, and you're going to discuss those savings options, give us feedback on those savings options. And just so you all know, for whatever reason, when we create PowerPoints in these classes, many of you are hung up on what it means to put speaker notes in. At the bottom of every single PowerPoint, there's a place, just at the center bottom, if you haven't formatted, if you're not dealing with some funky format or different format of slides, but every PowerPoint slide on the bottom has notes, has a notes line on the bottom. So speaker notes does not mean that you put 50 words onto the page. Onto the page, you might only have, 10 words or, just a brief outline like we do when we have these classes each week during the session. I might have 20 words on a page, just a real basic outline, and then I've got my own speaker notes, okay, speaker notes that I'm going off of or basing the information that I share off of. So this would be a situation, okay, you've got an outline on the slides, and then in the notes on the bottom of the page, the notes, you're going to be putting in at least 50 words worth of information on the 2 content slides that you create. If you've got any problems or questions on this notes issue, the speaker notes issue, let me know. Should be pretty straightforward. Like I say, when you're putting together a PowerPoint, it's always got a notes tab on the bottom that you can enter your notes into. Okay, and it gives you an opportunity to have notes that aren't necessarily something that you would be presenting. If you showed a class, for example, your outline of what you were trying to explain, you wouldn't bore them with just reading all your notes, right? The reading notes are for you and I as presenters to be able to reference off of. Okay, they're not for the folks who are listening to the presentation or viewing the presentation. Those are speaker notes. Okay. All right, let me know if you have any questions or concerns on that. Email me, call me, text me if you've got any questions. All right. Of course, you've got your 2 peer responses that are due this week to make sure for a total of 3 comments so that you can get full credit. I just got a quick note in here that says, hey, make sure and go back to previous weeks. Make sure you've got all the posts you need. Week 1 was 3 posts. Week 2 was 4 posts. Week 3 was 3 posts. And this week is 3 posts. So the only one that was a little bit different was week 2. It's kind of a midterm week of sorts. And they had you do 3 peer responses. So make sure if you're not getting full credit or didn't get full credit based on just not getting a post done, that you go back and make sure that you've got all the posts that you were supposed to do done and completed for the points available, right? Easiest way to get points in a class like this is the checkpoints. The second easiest way is to just make sure you've got all your peer responses done. They're not hard. They don't take a lot of time. They do take a little bit of time and effort as far as just thinking through how to create a thoughtful and substantive response, but not difficult. Okay, so get in there and make sure you've got all your posts done so that we can get the credit. We can get the credit that's available. And then this week, of course, you get checkpoints. Of course, you got your discussion that we just barely talked about, but make sure this week that you get your 15 points based on the career integration. You're going to have a course evaluation, which is different because that's anonymous. But the course integration, okay, the career integration feedback is just the 3 questions about the course, right? Usually asks you, what did you think about the readings? It asks you, what did you think about the instructor? And then in something like, how are you going to use this course in the future, or how do you think you can use this course in the future? And the idea is to get you to think through, okay, how can I actually apply the information that I've learned in this class, and not just for the sake of learning it just so I could jump through this hoop and get a score, which I know most of you, that's primary reason 1. But a close second should be, there should be some things that you can take out of a class like this and use the rest of your lives. And in a personal financial management class specifically like this, most of this information, if you wanted to, you could use the rest of your lives, and it could really change the trajectory of you and your financial success, your financial lives, forever. So you could be in a situation where right now you're just living paycheck to paycheck. You're not able to save anything. You're kind of falling behind as far as debt is concerned. And if you follow the tips and tricks and advice that we've been giving in this class, and really set out to be more disciplined and purposeful about how you manage your money, so that you're tracking things, you've got a nice budget, you've got a savings plan, you've got a debt plan, and you've got a future plan for your retirement and for saving, for the future. If all those things checked out after a class like this, you've made significant progress financially, even if you haven't saved a lot already. But just having those plans and being uh, being convicted about making sure that you're going to do those plans, that would be a huge value add from a class like this. Beyond the fact that you just pass the class to make sure and get your degree, you would have a lot that you could take with the rest of your life. So anyway, that's the point of career integration, is to give some feedback, to think through in your mind, okay, what did I learn from this class? What kinds of things can I take with me for the rest of my life? And then it also is a place where you can give some constructive criticism on the course content and also on me as an instructor. Okay? And again, a really easy way to get 15 points. So no reason not to get your 15 points because of how easy that is. All right, let's get to content this week. We've got quite a few different articles that we have for reading this week. You'll notice some of the sites are similar to other sites we've already used, or exactly the same as other sites, but just different articles on those sites. Some of these sites are just great resources if you ever have any questions about how to kind of manage what you're trying to do financially, or the types of goals that you've made, and how to move forward financially with whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. These are great sites. One of those great sites is saveandinvest.org. Okay, saveandinvest.org. This particular link talks about your different options to save. And the particular link that the site has, on our course homepage, talks about military options. So there's some things that are specific to being a military service member that aren't consistent with you and I as non-military service members. But I thought that was a good place to start. Most of it's fairly consistent. The point that they make is that when you're thinking about options to save, usually you have a thrift savings plan, a 401k, some kind of plan through work, okay, that you can do for retirement. And it's really important that you participate. It's really important that you don't rob that account at some point for something else, that you really treat it like sacred long-term future money. One of the things that makes retirement planning possible and retirement savings possible is that you're living within your means, that you're saving for different types of large purchases that you might make, and that you have an emergency reserve just in case something comes up that's unexpected, which in our lives there are always things that come up that are unexpected. So we've got to have funds ready for those circumstances, so that we can make sure that we don't have to rob our retirement plans. But back to this site, it talks about the thrift savings plan, the plan that's available through the government for government employees and military personnel. It's a great plan. It's one of these plans that if you put some money in, that the government puts some money in. Most work retirement plans, group work retirement plans for major companies, will have a situation where if you put money in, they'll match. Okay, they'll put money in as well. So just as an example, I work for the bank. I put 5% of my salary in, the bank will put 4% in, meaning if I put $100 in, they'll put $80 in for me. And I didn't have to earn that $80. I don't have to do anything to get that $80 other than to save in my retirement plan. And I tell people all the time, even if you're intimidated by picking different investment options, even if you think that the stock market's rigged and that you don't have any faith or confidence in the market or in investing, there's absolutely no reason, there's no good excuse not to participate in a 401k and get the free money available if there is a match that's available through your plan. Because if you are scared of the market, or don't want to pick investments, or are worried about the ups and downs or risk associated with an investment inside of a 401k, that there is always a fund within every 401k, TSP, any kind of IRA, whatever type of retirement plan that your employer has or that you would establish for yourself. There is always, 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 always an option to invest in a money market or basically a cash account, or what's called a stable value account, which means that you're not going to be in the stock market at all. You're not going to be taking risk at all. It's just a place to park your funds, especially if you're worried about how to invest. But there's no excuse, there's no good excuse to not participate in a work match, because that's free money that you're not taking advantage of. And you can put it in a cash account. So the excuse that you don't know how to invest or don't want to invest in the market isn't a good one, because there are non-market instruments. There are ways to invest in a money market, just a cash account within those retirement plans. Okay? So if you have any questions about a match or a work retirement plan that you have, let me know. I'd be happy to answer any of those. But the point is, the point that I wanted to get across is that if you have the opportunity for a match, you absolutely have to take advantage of that. Okay, usually you only have to put 3 or 4 or 5 or 6% of your income into it. This is much below our target 10 to 20% that we're trying to save. So it's not requiring you to save a ton. It's automatic. It's easy. They do it for you. And if there's a match, they're giving you quite a bit of free money that you're just leaving if you don't participate. Okay. Again, if you have any questions on that are more specific, let me know. Then all of us, whether or not we have an employer plan or not, whether or not we have a 401k or TSP or any kind of plan through our employer, all of us have the opportunity to participate in the IRAs. And of course, there are two different types of IRAs. There's a traditional IRA, which we just usually refer to as an IRA, individual retirement account. And then there's also a Roth IRA. So these are both IRAs. They're both individual retirement accounts, but one of them is a traditional IRA and one of them is a Roth IRA. All of us have access to traditional or a Roth IRA or both, okay? And these are basically programs that the government has put in place that allow us and incentivize us to save for retirement. Both of them grow without any kind of taxation. The key difference between these two plans is one of them, the traditional IRA, we get an upfront tax deduction for our contributions. A Roth IRA, we don't get an upfront tax deduction for our contribution, but we grow the money. We don't get taxed as it grows, just like we do in a regular IRA. And then when we retire in a Roth IRA, we get all the growth and gains over our lifetime of saving and investing in that Roth IRA out 100% tax-free if we wait until retirement, which is age 59 and a half. So it's one of the only vehicles in the world that you can save and invest, grow your money, and never pay tax on any of the growth. Everything else, if I were to invest in real estate, gold, silver, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, anything else, if they grow and then I sell them and use them in retirement, I'm going to have to pay tax on them in some way. Okay, so a Roth IRA is very unique that way, can grow 100% tax-free. However, both IRAs and Roth IRAs have limitations. So a regular IRA and a Roth IRA, you can only put $5,500 in per year per person, and you can put $6,500 if you're over 50. But the point is you're limited. So if I win $1 million from the lottery, I can't put $1 million into a Roth IRA, watch it grow tax-free, and then pull it out in retirement. I'm limited on how much I can put in. Okay, and each year the rule changes a little bit, but basically it's $5,500 and $6,500 depending on how old you are this year per person per year that you can put in total to IRAs. So if I have a Roth IRA, I can put $5,500 in. And then if I open a traditional IRA, since I've already put $5,500 into my Roth, I can't put another $5,500 in. I've already put my $5,500 in for total IRA contributions for that year. Then I can wait till next year, and I can choose to either split them between the two, or just put it into one. Either way, my aggregate total into all IRAs, Roth, traditional or otherwise, can only be $5,500 or $6,500 depending on my age. Now, the contribution level for 401ks is much higher. Okay, it's much higher. Close to $18,000 that I can put in a 401k of my own contribution, and then my employer can put in a bunch of money on top of that. And then if I'm over 50, I can put another 5,000 or so on top of that contribution level into a 401k. So it gives you a lot of room and flexibility in getting a lot of money into your retirement plan to have a 401k or TSP thrift savings plan. Then I mentioned a pension. Pensions don't usually allow for your participation. They're something that your work would have for you. Most non-government entities at this point do not have pensions. There are a few banks left that have pensions. There are a few companies, but most companies no longer have a pension. They have a 401k. 401k is by far the most common work retirement plan that's out there for retirement. Pensions used to be very common. 50 years ago, everybody had pensions. Our grandparents and parents had pensions through their employers. They'd work for the same employer for 50, 60 years, then they'd retire, and then they'd collect their pension. Nowadays, there's no pension at most employers. Most employers require that you yourself participate in something like an IRA or 401k to accomplish most of your retirement planning on your own as far as future income. However, having said that, even though most companies don't have pensions, the U.S. federal government has a pension. It's called Social Security. You pay into it. It's a tax that you pay into your entire working lives. And then when you retire, the government pays you back a pension or an annuity in the form of Social Security. Now, Social Security, the key features of Social Security, it's not nearly as complex as everybody makes it sound, or as much as financial advisor companies make it sound because they want you to come in and talk with them. It's really pretty straightforward. You've got 3 different ages to consider. You've got age 62, your full retirement age, and then age 70. Full retirement age can be different depending on your age. It can be anywhere from 66 all the way up to 67 or somewhere in between, but that's your full retirement age, and you would know it based on which year you were born, but it's different, a little bit different for different ages. 62 is early retirement as far as Social Security is concerned. It is the lowest amount that you can possibly get from Social Security, and if you work and take it at 62, there's a chance that they could claw back some of your Social Security and you might not even get your full benefit. Full retirement age is when you get the full number, the big number on the front of your Social Security, pamphlet that you get. That's considered full retirement. And then deferred retirement or delayed retirement is age 70. That's as long as you can possibly defer or delay, and that's the highest possible amount that you can get from Social Security happens if you wait till 70 to take from Social Security. So pretty straightforward. There's lots of different issues about divorce and death and disability and all kinds of other nuances to Social Security that happen. But the straightforward part as far as retirement is just 3 different ages that mean something, and depending on when you take it, that's the amount that you're going to get. It's a calculation based off 35 years of your work life. The average salary over 35 years of your work life goes into the formula of determining how much money you're going to get from Social Security. Now, most common question I get about Social Security as a financial advisor is whether or not Social Security will be around. The answer is yes, it will be around. Will it change? Most likely. Will it change for folks who are retiring now over the next 10, 15 years, and will they get Social Security? The answer probably is yes. The federal government will probably bankrupt Social Security, and really that's the track that it's on before they allow it to change for baby boomers and for the generation that's just getting close to retiring at this point. However, for the generation I would say under age 45, I would plan my future independent of Social Security. Do I think something will be there? Yes. But do I think you should anticipate the same kind of robust benefit that lasts for your entire retired life as our parents and grandparents? The answer is probably no. Okay. So I know that's kind of daunting. I know that's kind of a negative, but if it were me and I'm financial planning and I'm under 45 or 50 and saving for my future, I would not anticipate Social Security to be there. I'd be excited and ecstatic if it was there, but I'm not going to plan on it just in case it's not. Okay. All right, real quick. All right. So that is pensions and a little bit about Social Security. We talked about Roth IRAs versus regular IRAs. If you have any questions on any of this stuff, let me know. And then there's a big segment of what you can do from a standpoint of saving and investing that has nothing to do with retirement plans necessarily. They're not IRAs, they're not 401ks, but they're planning for your future, right? So non-retirement type investments like CDs, savings accounts, property, rental property, commercial property, land, metals, businesses, collectibles. There's all kinds of different things that you could potentially invest in or save into that can benefit you down the road, whether or not it's for retirement or for something else. It can benefit you. Could be for charity, could be for your family, could be for inheritance. There's lots of different ways and reasons why people will save and invest. It doesn't necessarily all have to be about retirement, although that's a common focus, right, to make sure that we've got enough money for retirement. So one of the things that you can do on this website, saveandinvest.org, is you can go into these calculators and basically tinker with how much you need to save in order to be ready for retirement. So what does that mean? Well, it'll allow you to put in how much you're saving in month to month in one of these retirement plans, like a TSP plan, 401k, IRA, or if it's a non-retirement plan that you're saving in. And then it will quickly be able to calculate for you how much you need to save each month to get to a certain target amount, or how much you'll get to based on the amount that you're already saving. Okay, so both of those calculators exist in this saveandinvest.org, in these different calculators, the calculators tab. And I think it's worth looking into and just kind of poking around with. However, if you take basic finance class through Stevens Henniger or Independence U, the basic finance class will show you within a financial calculator, which you can just access online if you Google financial calculator, or you can do it within Excel under financial calculations. And if you go under financial calculations under Excel, you can do future value, FV calculations, which allow you to put an interest rate in, assume some kind of interest rate that you're going to get on your investments. It'll allow you to put in the number of periods, meaning how many years or months that you're going to save towards your goal. And then it will allow you to put in the amount that you're going to make as a payment and the starting amount that you're going to start with. That's a future value calculation. And if you put in all that information, then it will automatically calculate for you what that future total is going to be based on how much you're saving, the interest rate associated with it, and how many periods, or how much time basically is going to go by before you get to your goal. Okay, so yes, a lot of these websites, there's lots and lots of websites. Bankrate has this as well, but almost every financial website now has calculators that you can use to calculate how much money you need to save for some future goal, or how much you're going to get to based on the current savings that you're making, or you can kind of tinker with those numbers and see what it turns out to be. Having said that, you can also do it on your own and create your own templates for future value calculations based on Excel and the financial calculators available there. Another interesting segment, I think, on this particular website is called, I think it's under a tab called Protect Your Money. And we can work really, really hard at becoming good financial managers, good money managers, good debt managers, good savers. And then if we aren't careful, if we aren't vigilant, we can end up investing in someone or something where we lose it all. Okay, so the easiest one to point to over the last decade, over the last 2 decades that I've been helping people with investments, teaching about finance principles and being a financial planner, is of course Bernie Madoff. He was one of the biggest scammers or scams that's happened in American history as far as fraud is concerned on investments. The thing that made Bernie so terrible, that situation so terrible, is that a lot of the folks investing in Bernie Madoff had all their money with him. All their life savings, all their inheritance, all the money that they had in the world was with him as their money manager. He also had a lot of non-for-profit groups that they're meant to do good in the world, right? That had put their money with him to save and invest because he had 30 plus years of track record showing people that these phenomenal returns. And so all these people, just thought they'd be silly not to invest with Bernie Madoff. He was so successful. Well, when we found out he was basically lying and cooking the books, as we call it, where you're making up the numbers and making up the returns over all those years, obviously, all these people ended up with nothing or near nothing. Some of them did get some back, but most of them got almost nothing compared to what they had invested. Now, how do you prevent yourself from falling prey to someone like Bernie Madoff? And perhaps more importantly, how do you avoid putting your money with somebody that maybe you know well, or that maybe you trust, or that maybe you think is going to do a good job for you? How do you avoid putting your money somewhere where you could lose everything? So there's a lot of different things you can do, and this website does a great job under the Protect Your Money tab in kind of talking through things. It has a great article about affinity fraud, which is one of the biggest ones that happens in Utah. People meet people at church. Those people at church seem successful. They could be living a complete lie as far as their finances are concerned. It's pretty easy to do that with credit cards these days. And then they, say that they've got some great opportunity for that person to invest or save, and that they'll take their money and invest it for them into some project or something that they're doing or some business. And then they just take that money and they basically go spend it on themselves. And we find out when it's too late that that person was a scam, and then we have nothing. We don't get any of our money back. Okay. Unfortunately, it happens with friends, family, church groups, neighbors. Any way that somebody can basically build a relationship of trust with you quickly is going to be a location where scammers are at. So One of the shows, I don't know if any of you have seen, is called American Greed, is on CNBC. It was one of my favorite shows for a long time, and every single show they highlight another person that basically has taken millions and millions of dollars from people and scammed them out of their money. Some of those scams are really complicated and really hard. They'd be hard to know, whether or not it was a scam or not. So what I tell people is, if you don't understand what you're investing in, first of all, don't do it. Okay? I know that sounds extreme, but if you don't understand what you're investing in, if you don't feel like you really have a good grip or grasp of what you're hearing, don't invest in it. Another one, just very simple adage that is very wise. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right? If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So if somebody's pitching you something that sounds phenomenal, it's liquid, it gets a huge return, it gets a higher return than anything else out in the marketplace, it has guaranteed results, it's never lost money, those kinds of lines don't exist in my world as a certified financial planner. I'm helping people with their money and investments all day long, every day, and highest returns possible, long-term, guaranteed, wonderful results. Those kinds of things don't exist in the real world. Okay? Some things can have a track record for a year or two and legitimately have a track record for a year or two of doing really well. Are they sustainable though? Probably not. And so we have to be very careful and vigilant about the too good to be true pitches that we hear sometimes. And especially from folks who, again, that we have this affinity fraud situation going on where they might be neighbors, friends, family members, church group folks, somebody in a place that we normally would automatically trust. We need to be especially careful about those. Those are people who can become predatory and really prey on others because they know they're in a situation where they might be lent some trust that they don't really deserve. Okay. Now, one of the things we do in other classes that I teach is we all do the exercise of researching and finding in your particular state a recent fraudster. And you would be surprised how easy it is. I mean, if you just want an interesting, exercise, go ahead and Google your state and then financial fraud of some kind, or a Ponzi scheme or something like that, and you'll find multiple stories, recent stories even, of people who have been defrauding people for money in your state or in your area or even in your community. And so just be careful. I don't say this because you need to be so scared that you put all your money under the mattress. There are legitimate institutions, okay? There are legitimate institutions that help people with money. They're usually not the places that yell the loudest and promise the most and guarantee the most. They're not the ones that yell the loudest about those kinds of things. They're usually the ones that talk about risk, that talk about reality of investing, how it goes up and down, how there's risks associated with everything you do. So they're the ones that are telling you the truth, okay? And it might not sound as good, but it's important to try to find somebody who's telling you the truth instead of somebody who's selling you a bill of goods, right? Selling you up the stream, selling you some snake oil. Be very, very careful about those folks, okay? Doesn't mean you can't be their friend, doesn't mean you need to shun them, doesn't mean you need to call them out or create a problem for them. Just means that you need to not, just respectfully decline, taking, doing something like that. And just as a closing note, the Department of Securities here in the state of Utah had a meeting some years ago, and there was a presenter there that was presenting to us about fraud. And fraud was very rampant back in Utah. It's still rampant now in Utah, but back in 2006, 2007, 2008, there was just a lot of fraud going on in the state. A lot of people perpetuating, Ponzi schemes and different fraud financially. And one of the things this presenter asked us is, what do you think the demographic of the folks who get taken advantage of when it comes to fraud is? Meaning, are they male or are they female? Are they minority? Are they white? Are they old? Are they young? Are they educated? Are they not educated? And one of the things that's fairly interesting about fraud and significant fraud that happens is actually in the state of Utah anyway, it was usually highly educated, white, middle-aged males were the most commonly defrauded individuals in the state of Utah. And so for those of you who are thinking, how am I going to know the difference between something that's fraud or not? I don't even have a degree in finance, or I don't even have a degree in economics or anything like that. How would I be able to seek this out? The thing to remember is that the people who are getting defrauded are the people who think they're smarter than the system. They think they found the magic bullet. And reality is there are not magic bullets. There are not things that are smarter than the system, loopholes in the system. There are ways to make money, and there are ways to successfully manage and invest and take risk, but we have to know what kinds of risks we're taking. We have to understand the things that we're doing, and we have to make sure we're not just getting sold something that's too good to be true and fraud. Okay, so I'd encourage you to poke around on the site a little bit about fraud. I know it sounds kind of extreme, but there's enough of it that goes on. I don't want any of you to work so hard, because it does take a lot of effort and time and energy and work and discipline to pay down debt, to save, to invest for the future, and then get to a point where you finally have some money put together for the future, and then get defrauded by some jerk who is out and just greedy and just trying to ruin people's lives for their own benefit, right? For their own benefit financially, because greed is driving them. So, yeah. Anyway, I'd really encourage you all to make sure and uh, at least familiarize yourselves with some of the fraud that goes on in your state. Each state has a division of securities, and most of the states have a publication that they do about the top 10 fraud issues for your state, or top fraud issues. They'll issue alerts, and it's amazing how many times people will come in to me as a financial planner and say, hey, I did this investment years ago and it turned out to be a fraud. And I'll say, well, what was it? And when I hear about it, I'll say, that I'll think to myself, that was one of those things that I remember seeing on the Division of Securities bulletin board for the state. And if we'd have just checked that periodically, then we would have never been involved, with that group or that individual that ended up defrauding us. Okay. All right, and then another savings issue that saveandinvest.org does talk about is education savings. And the education savings situation is that there are plans like 529s through each state that allow you to save and invest for your children's education, for your kids to be educated in the future. And these plans allow you to save and invest and then bring the money out tax-free, which is awesome, because then you can grow the money. So, for example, for my two daughters, I've got two daughters I've mentioned before. One of them's 11, one of them's 13. Every month we save a little bit in a 529 plan, and that 529 plan over the last 10, 11, 12, 13 years since they were born has grown. I don't put very much in. I just put a little bit each month, and they grow in the market, right? They're invested, so they go up and down with the market, but overall they've done very well. And when my girls go to college, I'll be able to take those funds out 100% tax-free, both state and federal, for education. So let's say, for example, to this point over the last 10 years that the balances have doubled in value. So I've put, let's say, a couple $1,000s in, and they're worth about 4,000, which is actually about what's happened. Anyway, I don't ever have to pay taxes on that $2,000 of growth if I take the funds out for education, which I plan on doing. I plan on them going to some kind of school, and it doesn't matter if they go to a tech school, some kind of beauty school, some kind of uh, you know four-year college or grad school. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of school, whatever education they're doing after they're done with high school. I can use these funds 100% tax-free for their benefit for school. So just be aware that there are plans out there that are very efficient for saving and investing for college and for your children's education. And so obviously, I would tell you, when it comes to education planning for your kids, that it's like the concept on an airplane where you put the oxygen mask on yourself. They tell you to do that before you help anybody else or assist anybody else with their oxygen mask. The same thing is true for educational savings. Make sure you've got your emergency reserve plan. Make sure you've got your debt plan to get out of debt. Make sure you've got your retirement plan, and then, and only then, maybe divert some resources towards education planning. But make sure those other more important priorities for you are taken care of before you get to the education planning and savings. But you can do education savings at a very small monthly level, automatically each month, and make some very good progress over the long term. And the fact that it comes out 100% tax free for education is a great benefit. Okay, so those are education savings plans, like 529s, that you can do through the state. Most states have a website, so if you were to research Your state, for example, Utah and 529, you would find the Utah Educational Savings Plan, which is uasp.org, and you'd be able to find some additional information on how you could start a plan for your children in order to save and invest for their future education. Okay? And almost every state has their own plan and a really easy way online to accomplish it. Another thing on this website, wait, I already skipped. Okay, so we did the education savings plan. Then there's another site, americasaves.org. We've already looked at americasaves.org. Americasaves.org is done by the AICPA, which is the group of certified public accountants. Their organization, the Association of Certified Public Accountants. So this is a great resource from, great professionals that you can learn from. It's got a lot of good sites. So particularly this article this week on the board, you'll notice that we've used americasaves.org before in different articles, but this week's article is 5 savings tips, and I think they're very good. We've talked about most of them. However, it reiterates some very important concepts that help us to save better. One is to make it automatic. We've talked about that over and over again. Every single week we talk about how whatever you do that's automatic is probably what you're going to be successful at. So make sure and automate your savings to pay yourself, okay, and to pay down debt. Make sure you've got an emergency reserve. We talked about how life will throw us emergencies from a financial planning standpoint. It absolutely will. If not multiple emergencies, sometimes more than one in 1 year. So what does that mean? If we know that happens, to all of us, it is critically important to our overall financial picture to save and invest for those emergencies. Make sure you've got emergency reserves. Ideally, you'd have those emergency reserves somewhere out of sight, out of mind, so that you're not looking at them all the time and thinking of ways to spend them, right? So that they're not linked to your checking account, so that you just automatically transfer whenever you need a few extra bucks for whatever purchase you've decided to make. Ideally, it would not be that way. It would be somewhere where it's a little bit harder to get to it, although still easily accessible, and something that you don't think about or see all the time, so that you can be more successful at growing that emergency reserve. That is what allows you, that's the foundational piece that allows you to be able to save and invest in the future. Okay, so saving and investing in an emergency reserve and making sure and keeping that fund robust is what allows you the opportunity to successfully save and invest for the future and pay down debt for the future. If you don't have that emergency reserve, what happens is you save for a while, and then an emergency happens, you end up robbing those retirement accounts, or adding to debt, whatever it is. If you're in a debt pay down situation, if you don't have an emergency reserve and an emergency happens, then you go back into debt. If you're in a retirement situation where you're trying to save for retirement, don't have an emergency reserve, and an emergency happens, then you end up robbing your retirement. So it ends up ruining all the other kinds of financial planning that you do if we don't have some sort of reserves, or at least try to put together some sort of reserves. It's usually step one when it comes to trying to save for the future and trying to be more financially or fiscally sound, is to make sure that you put together some emergency reserves, and ideally you just save into them automatically each and every month for the rest of your lives. You always have money going into your emergency reserves, and that stand ready to help you out if something comes up. You avoid bad debt. That's one of the big savings tips. If you're paying a lot of interest on bad debt, it makes it very, very difficult to make any progress on saving, right? If I've got a 25% credit card, or a payday loan, or a title loan, or a pawn loan that's charging me, like 1% of interest a day or more, it becomes very, very difficult to feel like you can ever make progress saving for the future when you've got that kind of debt, what we'd refer to as bad debt. You automatically save the future within a 401k or IRA. We talked about that a little bit before. And finally, you plan. You put a plan together. You put a little bit of effort into making sure and plan your financial situation. We talked about in a different class that I teach about goal setting, about making SMART goals. Okay, what does the acronym SMART stand for? It's for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-sensitive goals. You actually have a specific goal. It can't just be, hey, I'm going to get rich and live a life of luxury. That's a nice overarching goal, but that's not a goal that we can do anything about, right? So we got to make it very specific. Your specific goal might be, I want to have $1 million by age 65. Okay, that's a very specific goal. It has a time attached to it. The problem with that goal is it's not something that I can get ownership of right now. So what you have to add to that is something measurable and achievable and relevant to right now. So if I want $1 million by age 65, maybe it means that I've got to save $300 a month into something that gets an average of an 8% return. So it's got to be something that's invested and gets an average of an 8% return. And I've got to start, and I've got to do that for the rest of my working life, over the next 35, 40 years. Okay. And then I can get to that goal. But it's something specific, achievable, relevant, time sensitive, that has an actual time commitment associated with it. So just remember to make sure that our goals and financial plans are smart, that they have that specificity to it that allows us to accomplish what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Anyway, those are some different ideas when it comes to planning. But the point is, and perhaps the most important step, is to just put the effort, time, and energy into thinking through some of this strategy and planning that you want to accomplish. That's the biggest, hardest step. A lot of us just never even get to that point. Once we do it, obviously the heavy lifting becomes being disciplined enough to stick to it, right? Be willing to adjust, but be disciplined enough to stick to it. Some of us are not as disciplined. Most of us, human nature is not as disciplined. And so automating everything, making it automatic is so critical, because then we don't have to use as much discipline when it's automatic. One of the things I did want to mention from this week, and we don't have a lot of time left, I was going to go over some of these stories associated with the America Saves website, but I do want you to take a few minutes this week and go through some of these stories. Okay, I put down some of the bullet pointed some of the different stories, some of the story titles that are on there, the stories of real individuals across the country that are part of the America Saves organization, and they have accomplished something financially. So one of them says they have nothing to save. They kept saying they have nothing to being able to convince themselves that they really do have something that they could save, finding something that they could save each month. There's stories after stories about somebody starting with like $10 a month, $20 a month. And yeah, it feels like you're not making a lot of progress, but there is something significant to just getting a start, no matter how small it is initially. There's another video or article about somebody who basically says, I couldn't do it, and then can change their attitude to I will do it. I will make a way. I will will myself to be able to save something on a monthly basis. Another lady talking about how overwhelmed she was to have Christmas in her house after being able to save for home ownership and put herself on track for owning a home with her family as a single mom of some young children. Another one was about just getting financially fit, really figuring out what it meant for her to get financially fit. Anyway, article after article after article on this America Saves website that I feel like are very inspiring. These are real people. These are people who have been through really tough situations. Some of them, divorce, death, single mothers, single fathers, that are just trying to make it. And sometimes we get caught in this survival mode. Most of us get caught in a survival mode if we're not careful, and it's hard, but it can be done, where you change from survival mode to a more purposeful future future plan, right? Yes, we all have to survive, but most of us can find a way to create that future plan as well, and prepare ourselves a little better for the future financially. There's another site, 360 Degrees of Financial Literacy, also by the AICP. It has some nice calculators, Q&A, and topics. I'm not going to go through that. Obviously it's a mandatory reading for this week. Go ahead and look around on that site. It's got some good information. And then one of the things that I wanted to end with today is just some of the things that I think are important. Okay, putting together the savings plan. So we've talked about putting together your budget. Then we talked about evaluating your debt and credit, making sure it's in order. Then last week we talked about just basic money management tips and tricks. And then this week we're talking about the savings plan. And it's just so important to make sure that you've got emergency reserve savings like we've talked about, but it's also important to have mid-range savings goals, like the next vehicle, the next vacation, the next home, if we're looking for home ownership or to change homes or to move. These are all things that we could be automatically saving a little bit each month to make progress towards, instead of just going into debt to accomplish them whenever we do them. We want to be able to save each month for debt reduction, to save and put money against the debts that we have. We want to be able to invest for the future But we also want to be able to make investments in things that will create additional income sources for us today. Things like rental property, things like bonds or stocks that have dividends that pay us, that pay us for holding them. Things like different loans that we can do. Things like, maybe a small business of some kind that creates some income. And then finally, uh, retirement as well. So there's all these different aspects of a a savings plan. If we've got a good, robust savings strategy or savings plan, it's going to include all these different pieces, even if they're just very, very small. And I want to be clear on that, because some of us look at a list like this and they say, oh, this is just overwhelming. I can't even save anything. I don't even save any money every month. Well, maybe it's you take 1% of your paycheck, you put it into your 401k on the retirement part. Check. We did something, right? We can always improve it and increase it in the future, but we got started. Maybe it's investments. We're going to put $50 a month into Disney stock. And Disney pays us a dividend, and it's a good company, and it's going to help us in the future to have more, assets and more income. Maybe on debt reduction, we throw an extra $5 or $10 onto our car payment each month. Maybe as far as mid-range goals, we save $50 a month for the next vehicle. Okay. And finally, on savings and emergency funds, maybe we save $25 a month into a savings account at our bank in order for us to increase our emergency reserves. Okay. And these are all things that we've been able to find room for based on making sure to be disciplined about our budget and our expense tracking and the expenses that we're paying on. We might be able to free up enough just by having better interest on a loan that we have, or paying something off, or not getting into debt, or getting rid of a credit card, or changing our cell phone provider, or changing our insurance, or changing a utility. Those kinds of things might free us up, free up $100 or $200 that we can accomplish all of the stuff I just mentioned, so that we've got a savings plan that includes all these different aspects and components, but isn't necessarily a big chunk of money. It's just making progress towards all our savings goals, and then we can adjust and tweak and change and increase these different savings goals over time. Okay? So I hope all of you feel like there's something you can do, even if it's small, right away, even while you're in school, to start to create the ideal savings plan for yourselves. Now, whether or not you can accomplish that ideal savings plan, that's a different story, right? We're all trying to do better and make a little bit of progress. That might be overwhelming overnight to be accomplishing an entire savings plan. But what you might do is, like I say, make a little bit of progress towards some of the components or some of the aspects of this plan. And I think that would be a huge benefit to you, because then when you start working, you've already got the construct, you've already got the pieces in place, and then you've got more income at that point, right? And you can really start to make some great progress towards these goals. All right, any questions or concerns, give me a call, email me, text me. That is week 4 as far as savings and savings plans. Best of luck this week. Finish strong. Let me know if you have any questions or get stuck on anything, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.